In this video, we're going to review how to solve for the length of a side inside a right angle triangle. So again, if we are dealing with a right angle triangle, and we can tell because we are given this little square symbol in one of the corners indicating 90 degrees, we can use that little memory aid of SohCahToa to help us remember the side length ratios for each of the three angles. Sine is the opposite over hypotenuse, cosine adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent opposite over adjacent. Now, looking at our two triangles, the first thing we want to do is we want to label the sides of our triangle, and we're going to label them with the adjacent, opposite, and hypotenuse sides so that we can apply our SohCahToa memory aid. If we take a look at the first triangle, we're given an angle measure of 33 degrees for this angle here. So why don't we stand in that corner? And that will be our perspective when we label the three sides. In the other triangle, we are given 19 degrees as the angle measure, an indication that we are going to stand in this corner here. Well, the first side that we want to label is going to be opposite the 90-degree measure, the right angle measure, and it is the hypotenuse, the longest side. So I will label the hypotenuse in both sides, or in both triangles. The next side that's the easiest to label is the adjacent side. And if you want to just think about it, the first two letters in hands are H and A. So if you think that where you're standing, you could hold hands with the two sides of this triangle. Well, H is already taken care of for your one hand. That means that A would be on the other hand, and that's the adjacent side length. Here, you're standing in this corner. You have two hands, H already taken care of, A is your other hand, and there's the two first letters of hands, and that takes care of the hypotenuse and the adjacent side, leaving us with opposite and opposite. So now that we have the three sides labeled, we can now use our SohCahToa memory aid to go ahead and solve for the length of x. So we know the angle measure of 33 degrees, and we are interested in solving for x, which is the hypotenuse. We are given the opposite side length here in the left triangle. So the two sides that we have are the opposite, and we're interested in the hypotenuse. Looking at our memory aid, that would be sine, opposite and hypotenuse. So we will write the sine of 33 degrees. Well, that ratio is equal to the opposite side, 11, over the hypotenuse, x. Okay, so now we'll just solve for x. We have to be careful here. We're going to do this in two steps. First thing we're going to do is we're going to move the x up to the left-hand side. We are dividing by x on the right, so when we move it up, it's going to be moved with multiplication, leaving us with x times the sine of 33 degrees equals 11. Okay, step 2. Well, step 2 is to isolate x by moving sine 33 to the other side. X and sine 33 are currently being multiplied together, so when we move it, we will move it with division, and x will be equal to 11 divided by the sine of 33 degrees. Now here's our calculator, so we can go ahead and we can type in this calculation and find out what x is equal to. So we will just ask, what is 11 divided by the sine of 33 degrees? And that's equal to 20.196. So on this here, we have x equals 20.196. It asks to find x to one decimal place, so we'll round this appropriately. X is equal to 20. One decimal place rounding would give us 20.2. Let's move on to the second triangle. We can see it in the second triangle. We're asked to find the length of x to one decimal place, and we are standing in a corner that has a side or an angle measure of 19 degrees. Well, the two sides that we're interested in are the opposite side, and we are given the length of the adjacent side. Opposite and adjacent, that is tangent. So the ratio that I can write is the tangent of 19 degrees is equal to the opposite side, x, over the adjacent side, 15. I'm going to now isolate the x, and x is currently being divided by 15, so when I move the 15 to the other side, the opposite of division is multiplication, and that results in 15 times the tangent of 19 degrees will be the answer I'm looking for, which is x. So x is equal to, 15 times the tangent of 19 degrees equals 5.164. So x is equal to 5.164. We're asked to round to one decimal place. 1/6 will round to 0.2. So 5.2 is the solution for this side. All right, so what you have to be careful about when you're solving for the side length is, first, label your sides appropriately with opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. And second, if you end up starting to solve a ratio where x is on the bottom, as in this case, you have to make sure that there are two steps to moving that to the other side. First, we move x up to the top, then we move sine back down to the bottom where the x used to be. So they swap places. Okay? And remember, SohCahToa can only be used in a triangle where you see a 90-degree angle. So a right-angled triangle is the only place you can use SohCahToa.